All right, Sangram, welcome to the Great Retention. I'm so excited for you to be joining us today.
Man, excited about time I get on the show. So this is good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got a ton of respect for you as a leader,
I appreciate that.
as a friend, as a fellow tech B2B startup guy. So thank you again. I'm so excited just to dive in. So why don't we start with the journey?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to ask you to tell us a journey in 30, your life in 30 seconds. Right.
Oh my gosh.
But so we're here at the Atlanta Tech Village. You actually co-founded Terminus.
Yep.
Here.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all back to your roots.
These
here.
hallways.
Right,
I remember these hallways that we're looking at right now. The rooms on the side. I was walking up here. I'm like, oh wow, we spent a lot of grueling time over here.
The trenches.
Yes.
Right. And so, so just kind of give us, that overview. So, you started this company, Terminus. You grew, you raised funds.
Yeah.
Then accelerating, and then now most recently a pullback,
yeah.
right? Just from overall economic times.
Yep.
And then now you're focused on a brand new venture. So
yep.
I want to hear a little bit about that too.
Yeah. So Terminus, really fascinating story on there. I was running marketing at Pardot and I was at Salesforce. And I remember the two co-founders, the original two co-founders of Terminus, Sped and Vass, they were doing a pitch at Tech Village over here. Like literally here, which is awesome, right? To have that community where you can come see different things happening. And I saw that pitch and I'm like, well, you guys are talking about it like an agency. This is a product. You should be talking about this as a product. And I thought maybe I'll become an advisor to that company.
Okay.
And then I met Sped and Vass later on. And long story short, they're like, why don't you just come in? You feel so strongly that this should be a product. You feel strongly about the future. Why don't you just join us? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was the first time.
It's a big move.
Yeah,
right?
it's like,
Pardot is a huge, great brand. Yeah, Salesforce. I mean, so that's a big move.
That was a big move. And I wasn't sure. I had this conversation with my wife, like as we just had our second baby. And, and she's like, so what do you want to do? You want to leave Salesforce, have the only paying job that you have, that we have that sustains our family. We just got another baby. I'm not working. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know. But if I don't do this, I am going to regret. That was the conversation. And a week of back and forth, she was like, okay, well, if you're going to regret, I can see this is something you really want to do. Here's the thing. And this is for every CEO listening to this, every leader listening to this. This is the best thing that happened to me to get Terminus going. And it's so important. A lot of times you talk about all the things in the business, but what really happens before the business to get to the business is the real story.
Yep.
So my real story really is all about what she said that night to me. She said, Sangram, I can see in your eyes that if you didn't do this, you're going to regret really bad. And I don't want 10 years, 20 years from now for you to be saying that I just wish I did it.
Wow, that's powerful.
And she said, but here's the thing. I'm going to go get a job because you got to pay the bills. Yeah. Like, we're not going to make that kind of money anymore. And we're going to put our second baby, Kiara, our daughter, she's just 4 weeks old, into a daycare because we were not ready to do all this. There's a big life adjustment happening at that time. But here is the bottom line. You have 1 year to show me this thing has legs.
Wow.
If you don't get legs to this thing, you're going to go find a real job.
So the clock is ticking.
Clock is ticking. So imagine, John, like I'm going and we're coming through these hallways. We're talking about Tech Village. We're doing all that. That's one of the reasons why we wrote the book in the first year. We did multiple conferences because I was like, there is no plan B. Like this has to work. This is my only shot. And I feel like if she wouldn't have given me the year, I would have just floundered a little bit longer. I would have done a few things the same maybe, but maybe taken a lot longer. Maybe things would have gone. But what's running against all of us as leaders is time.
Yeah.
And what she gave me the gift of making sure that this time was crunched and was clear to me from the beginning. It's like if somebody tells you like you're going to die in like 10 years or 10 days or 10 weeks, the perspective will do different things.
Right.
That's what she did. She said, you have 1 year of life left in your entrepreneurship. So make this work. Otherwise, you're going to go back, whatever you do.
That is an amazing story. And it's actually an important reminder as an entrepreneur just to never, lose that fire.
Yeah.
That hunger, right? It's, my back is against the wall. I'm going to just claw my way no matter what, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that story. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, the rest of Terminus is just we went from this starting in early stage company to starting to become kicked out of ATV because we're too big, which was like, oh, okay, that can be true too. You can be kicked out of your own place in some ways. So we've grown. We have 300 plus employees over the years, and have gone over 50 million in revenue. So that start was the spark, was that conversation with my wife.
Yeah. Okay. And then most recent, you're launching a new venture. Tell us just a quick high level on that.
Yeah. So I literally took a month. I just came back. It took a month and traveled with my family to India just to have a clean break. And it was so necessary. Like another pro tip is like, take the break. Like, take the break.
Take time.
Yeah. Take time. Like let life pass by. Take a moment where life just passes you by.
Got it.
We don't do that enough.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't. And so it's called Go-to-Market Partners. My third book, GTM, the Move, which is how modern companies go to market. I've been able to do that at Pardot. We did that with Terminus. And now I want to help hundreds and thousands of companies to do that. Because that's ultimately what I think is driving me right now, is that, okay, I did it. Do I want to start another software company to build that? I don't know. I can do that, but I don't know if that's what's driving me. My ambition is no longer driving me to build another multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar company. My ambition is driving, like, can I see and figure out a way to help this? Because it's not rocket science, but there is some method, some process. And I love this quote from James Clear. You may have heard this one, where he said that we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. So let me say that again. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. The reason everybody wants to be a successful company that's here right now listening, you want to be a great leader. But why is it that only a few companies or few people are able to rise to the level? Well, they don't just rise to the level of their goals. They actually have systems. They have frameworks. They have processes. They have schedules. They have rhythms that make them go there faster than anybody else. And that's what I want to spend the next decade of my life.
I love it, Sangram. And I love the servant heart too. It's like you've gathered these experiences through real life, going through, the ups and the downs, right? And so now you're sharing this with other leaders, and that's part of the vision of even the Great Retention, is to share insights, share best practices, and build up a community to ultimately create a better workplace for everyone. So love that. So let's go into your experience, go back to Terminus around culture. Right. So, a 10, 20, 30 person company, hey, we all see each other in the room every day, to a couple 100-person company, to raising tons of money. I got to feel like that, that culture can evolve, that can change. So tell us a little bit about, what does culture mean to you as a leader? What does it mean? What does it mean at Terminus? Has that changed over time? Just any kind of overview there. I'd love to get your thoughts on.
I had a lot of definitions of culture over the years. Initially, as my entrepreneurship career started with Terminus, really, I felt that, culture is ping pong tables and big sofas and couches and free popcorn and Cokes and because that's what ATV kind of afforded, and I never had that experience before. I'm like, that's great, that's culture, there's energy, there's vibe, that's awesome. And then you get a quarter where the numbers dip, and then all of a sudden you recognize that there is only one culture that works and thrives, a culture that is a winning culture. The day, the quarter, the year, the numbers dip, you find the reality of what's happening. If you're winning, if you're going up into the right, everybody's always happy. But all of a sudden, when a quarter dips, that's when I hit for the first time, like, the ping pong table is not the culture. It might be good for people to let off some steam and have some time and get some creativity and relationship going. But that's not a culture. You need to create a winning culture. And winning culture always doesn't mean sales numbers, but at some point, all the other things drives back to that. You can't. It will be hard pressed to find a company that is going down and has a thriving culture where everybody's happy, right? So you got to figure out a way. What are these sequencing of things, the forcing functions of your company that helps you to grow, if not exponentially, but incrementally? Probably more important to keep growing than just grow up and then fall down and then go up and fall down.
Right. So let's unpack that a little bit more. So winning culture.
Yeah.
Right. And so you said it's not just about growing your quarterly sales numbers, right? So talk to us about how you've defined, or how what the experience is for someone at Terminus to be part of a winning culture. And then, okay, you hire someone in, after, maybe the big meeting, or what does that culture mean to them? How do they experience that winning culture?
I have a personal framework that came about. The first time I hired a head of sales, I failed. And I'm like, I thought I knew how to do it. Then I hired a head of marketing to run under everything I was doing. I failed again. I'm like, what's the problem? These people were highly recommended. They came with incredible experience. And why are they failing? Why am I failing? Really? Because clearly they did well. Like, what's happening over here? And the interview process was great and everything was great. And I realized that what I was trying to do was look for skill set, and I wasn't looking for mindset. And so let's unpack that for just a second. If you have a new beginning, let's say you're building a new team, what I think at that time you need is a dreamer. Somebody who can dream up things, is not worried about chaos, is trying to figure out. It's totally cool. What you don't want is a doer who is like, okay, I need process. And well, you can't have a process until you have a team. You can't have a team until you figure out what you want to do. You can't so all these things. So I realized that I was hiring a different mindset person, even though they had the same skill set. So I realized for the department that was starting off, I needed a dreamer. Then at some point when I hired a CS leader and then failed again, I realized that we had a 5-people team. What I needed on that team was a sense of urgency. So I needed a driver who could say, you know what? We have great thing. We need to increase these numbers. We need to increase productivity. We need to figure out how to drive these things forward. So I needed a driver for that role. But I was hiring either a dreamer who was thinking, well, let me change the team. The team was great. We didn't need to change the team. We need to just elevate the level of their sense of urgency for getting things done. And then there was in the engineering team, when we had the first IT lead, we recognized that we needed a doer. Somebody who could actually just get things done that we can trust. They can execute and give the product out there at the time that's needed, the features, and not worry and not have political stuff, like just get things done. So this idea of a dreamer, doer, driver really helped me. And then the company, we just helped a lot of people in the company think about it. Is like, what do you need? Don't hire for skills that you can have a gold star and do amazing things. But if you don't know why, and you're bringing that person into this and what type of function they're leading, it's going to be horrible for them. It's going to be horrible for you. So the culture to me, a lot of times, is just figure out what is the winning combination. So the part of creating a winning culture is putting winning people that know that they can do that for the right role. Get a dreamer, get a doer, get a driver, wherever needed. If you mix that up, you're going to mess the whole culture up.
I love it. So as a leader, I'm looking, so skill set's one thing, but then mindset. But I have to match that mindset with, I guess, the stage of where we are as a company. Right?
Or more importantly, at the local level in that team. Because if the team is well built, and you don't need to have somebody re-innovate it, you don't need a dreamer. The dreamer will kill the team, because the dreamer will come with new ideas, like I do. I'm a dreamer, so I'll come up with new ideas. I'll try to create new things, and they're like, we are already overworked. We need process. We need to do less. We don't need to do more. So I felt like I failed a few times recognizing the difference between mindset and skills. And it's hard. It's hard because on paper, it's like, oh yeah, I can do all of it. But when you come to the day-to-day work, it's really hard to figure that out.
I love, it makes sense. I think you're right though. It's easier said than done. Right. Especially when you see, just someone who has this great experience and on paper, the interview process. So I really, that's super, super helpful, Sangram. So
these are all scars. These are all battle scars.
But it's real. It's what you've experienced, right? And that's what I think makes it so valuable. right? So let's like take this even further now. So hey, I'm working on building a winning culture. I'm working on bringing in people with the mindset that's going to fit the team at the local level. And now all of a sudden I'm in this environment where people are remote. I'm
Yeah.
hiring people all over the country or even the world.
Yep.
Hey, we've got some hybrid, but I don't see people like I used to,
Yeah.
right? So what's your experience been with the hybrid remote work, the impact on culture? Is there any lessons learned from navigating that? I'd love
Yeah.
to get your
I'll tell
feedback
you,
on.
as a leader, it's a horrible thing. Like, not many people say it straight up, but I'll just tell you, it's very hard because we didn't grow up like that. We didn't imagine like that. Like, I imagine the first person who's someone whose first job is in a company has to be remote, where he or she has no cultural experience of what's going on. Like, how do you onboard that person and ingest the vision that you would have, that energy when you're talking
And the
about
culture, the winning culture,
Yeah,
right?
like it's so hard. It's a horrible thing for every leader. I think it's a nightmare in many ways, and many people don't talk about it or think through or express that. And I'm like, just own it. Like, yeah, it's really hard to do that as a leader. So what do? You have to adapt. You have to figure out what is the best thing you can do, the next best thing. Because if you can't do that, then you have to figure out the next best thing. That's what we all get paid for as the leaders in the organization. I think where we galvanized the organization was, as we got to about 300 plus people, we're like, where are the local hubs? Where are the people right now? So we literally looked at the map of where all these people are. Obviously we have in Atlanta, but in San Francisco, we opened a London office, and we have in Chicago. So we said, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're not going to force anybody to do this. Like, you have to be in the office, or you don't have to be in the office. We're not going to create a policy. Like, that's not what we want to do.
Okay.
What we want to do is create an environment where people do what the best thing is, again, led by the leaders at the local level. So if you're an engineering team, most of them don't want to come to the office to do anything. So like, we're already working on the night and this and that, and that's how they work. Fine. So we created the local hub, saying every 6 weeks or so, you can have a happy hour, half day dream session, where you could just come up with ideas, go whiteboard, then go to a Braves game, do something that allows them to come together in local areas. And that might happen with marketing, sales, and engineering, all of them coming together. Sales, for example, a lot of the sales teams that we have are actually in Atlanta. They're like, okay, you like that culture where everybody's together, high-fiving as the deal closes. You want that, right, as a sales team. Okay, so at the local level, you make that decision. 2 days a week or 3 days a week, if you want to come to the office and do that, go for it. Like, we are not going to stop you from that, but we're not also going to force you to do that. At the executive level, every 6 to 7 weeks, we as an executive leadership team is trying to meet somewhere, either in Atlanta or Indy or some other location. So we're just creating these environments, as we're calling it, or experiences, where we're excited to go there. We're excited to come back. We can decompress. We can do everything we need to do, and then go back and do the work that needs to be done remotely, because that's where most of the things are happening right now.
Right.
So doing it at the local level is the key, is what we're finding out.
Got it. Yeah, no, it makes sense. So I like the idea of empowering your leaders at that local level to decide, okay, what's going to be best for the team? Right. Engineering versus sales.
Yeah. Different. Right? Here's the funny part about that thing that just reminded me. I remember at one point, we at the Terminus building over here, we had engineering and the sales team on the same floor.
Oh boy.
So you walk around the engineering side and it's like dim light, dark, like you see like a couple of things and then a couple of like, weird things. Or in engineering, it's just quiet, like just dim blue light or something like that. And then you just turn around and sales, they're playing the gong music, they're jumping up and down, and they're like beating, they're doing winning
high energy.
Yeah, and there was like, they really didn't like each other. So we had to kind of move the engineering team at a different area. And so it is at the local level. It is, you can tell people this is what you got to do. Like, that's not the world we live in. It's what is the best way to get the highest amount of productivity for you? That's truly the winning culture.
Yep. Yeah. But still, even with the leaders, every 6 or so weeks, you're getting together.
Yes.
Okay.
That is so important. Like, I don't know how else to do it. Like, if you don't do that, the challenge with Zooms and all of this is that every meeting is an agenda-based meeting.
Right.
Every meeting, like nobody schedules some meeting saying, okay, we're doing a coffee break, like, and people have tried. We have tried it, like, hey, happy hour.
Yeah.
People are like, okay, 5 p.m. after all the day of being on the Zoom,
I don't want to be on that anymore. Yeah,
yeah, like I don't want to drink and look at a Zoom screen. Like that's the last thing I want to do.
It.
So we all have tried to adapt it, and it comes down to now let's just meet people when we are all ready, create forcing functions where people actually want to engage, and let them do the best work they want to do at the local level, because that's really what the value and the winning culture thrives from.
Yep. No, it's great, Sangram. So one other area I want to dig in while I got you here is the big buzzword, the Great Resignation.
Yes.
Okay. And I believe that even when you have changes in the economic environment, the idea of keeping your good people doesn't change.
Yeah.
Right. And probably even more important.
Yeah.
In times of uncertainty. Right. So, what's your experience been with the Great Resignation? Has this had an impact? Has it had an impact on culture? How have you guys navigated this?
Huge. Okay. Huge impact. I think you don't know what the culture really is until you go through something like this. The economic uncertainty as COVID hit and all of those, it was painful. It has been painful for almost everybody.
Yeah.
And in some ways, what we learned through that is, okay, it's just not gonna work the way we thought it's gonna work. It's just not. What I mean by that is there are certain people who are like, okay, well, I think it's time. Like some people chose to resign because they're like, you know what? If you're going to have the kids home and if you're going to do this thing, one of the spouses needs to stay at home. The Great Resignation, there's a big part of that actually happened because of that. Very few people, again, I actually took the time to dig in the data. Is like, where is the resignation happening? So almost like 15 or 18% of the percentage of the resignation happened when spouses made those decisions. Like, instead of paying for daycare and do all these things, if you're going to work from home as my spouse, I need to take care of the kids. We have no choice. Yeah. We need to do that. And I don't want additional stress. That was really interesting to look at the data too. It's real. The jobs, the fact that the job market changed, and we saw that, okay, now I was driving by Chick-fil-A. It's like $15 an hour to flip a burger. I mean, I don't know if you got $15 when I did any of that. Like, it wasn't $15. It's like $15 to flip a burger. So there's a compensation change that happened all of a sudden. We're like, okay, we're paying to get somebody. We're going to pay on crazy amount of money, and the people who are actually working the organization, they're busting their butt, they're getting a 3% increment.
Right.
Can't do that. So that also fueled into this Great Resignation in a big percentage. Is like, oh, this is not fair. People can see it. And then you talk about the next year. I remember one of the teams, they would openly talk about salaries. Like you and I, the generation, we don't talk about salaries as open. Like they were like, oh, we're on this one team and would openly talk about, hey, how much do you make? I'm like, because there's no policy. Like you're not going through the policy mechanism anymore. A lot of them are coming for the first time in a workforce. So they're like, oh, you make more than me? How's that work? Like, what did you do? Like, they're not talking about negotiation skills or anything. They're like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. We all should be making the same, or we should be making more. So now you have these generational challenges that are happening in between organizations. This is the first time where I believe there are about up to five generations working in the same place. All the way from baby boomers to someone who's like Gen Z, Gen X. So it's really interesting because it's a different way. Yeah. And then you think about the analog versus digital natives that people call it. Like a lot of people grew up with Google as their first thing. They're like, okay, I can Google thing. And some of us, we were like, what? No, Google is like, just came out. Like, you use it later on, but they started on Google. Yeah. So there is all of this thing happening that is fueling the Great Resignation that has happened. It's the percentage, how people think about their life, thinking about their priorities, thinking about the unfairness sometimes in the pay rates and the way people work. The priorities have shifted in a big way.
Wow. I'm taking notes. This is, when you stack it all together like that, it paints a picture. Yeah. Right. And so as a leader, I have to be aware of this and I have to be proactive. Right. And understand that, that maybe communication, how the experience of a baby boomer versus a Gen Z, I have to account for that. Right. So, yeah, no, that's a really, really interesting perspective, Sangram. So as we wrap up, maybe just share two things. One is for leaders who are listening on the show today, what are maybe some practical pieces of advice that they can just go and immediately apply to their organization, right? And then secondly, if I want to, I think that we all want to, accelerate growth and we're in that growth mindset.
Yeah.
So how do I get plugged into go to market?
Yeah.
And so give us a little overview on that too.
All right. So from an advice perspective, I believe we have to recognize that leadership is no longer top down. Leadership has to be at the local level, as we talked a couple of times.
Yep.
And it has to be in the service of something. And if somebody leaves, it's not always your fault. It was very hard, John, for me to kind of wrap. Like when somebody leaves, I take it personally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, why did that person leave? Like, why did I not know that they were going through something, or why did not I understand also, especially if somebody that's regrettable and they're leaving because of something that you could have solved or addressed that. So, but you can't control all of it. So as a leader, first, you have to just recognize that you have to give and learn to give yourself grace and recognize that you're not going to have all of it.
Yep.
The second part of that is you need to get proactive around it. So you need to figure out a way to get to the second, third, fourth, fifth level people and figure out what's going on. I wouldn't have known about these people talking about salaries if I'm not plugged into that level in some way, shape, or form, because leaders typically are way too removed. And because you're not around the water cooler anymore, you're out of the screen. You're out. You're not even in the conversation anymore. So it's very hard to understand what's going on and get a pulse of the organization that seemed to be obvious when you walk in a room full of people.
Yep.
So as a leader, you have to find ways to communicate better and more and differently based on different types of people. You have to learn to understand where majority of the people, but you can't do that for everybody. So you have to start creating programs that allow the high potential people to galvanize and come up. And that's really where you can spend time. I have this thing about just from a faith perspective, you think about, the Jesus spent most of his time with his disciples, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, so you spend the most of your time with the people that you can impact the most, so you can have the most greatest amount of impact throughout the world. So I feel as a leader, we have to figure out who are the 10 people that I need to pour into and spend time with, because that's really all. Like if that's your output of it, if you can figure out the 10 people or 12 people or 6 people that you need to pour everything you got into it, because those are the people who, if you can retain, they will do the same thing for the next 6. They can do the next 6, and that's how you make sure that your organization actually has a winning culture. So I feel like that's really how I think about it, because you can control what you can.
That's great. That's great.
And from GTM Partners perspective, it's what it is. It's to help companies go to market. There are modern ways to go to market. Some people might look at product-led growth, to community-led growth, to category-led growth, like you guys are doing right now. You guys are doing a phenomenal job by focusing on the main pain, being saying, the great retention. We need great retention. That's what great companies are not made up of great products. They're made up of great people.
Great people. Yeah.
That's spirit. Like there is no company out there say, I have the greatest products, so we're going to win. No. No great product wins unless they have great people who deal with that and drive it. Yep. So I feel what you guys are onto is onto a big idea that I love the way you're going about it. All right. So for listeners of this podcast, I want to offer a gift. Right, I wrote this book called Move, which is 4-question go-to-market framework. It has become Wall Street Journal bestseller. It has done really well. So every time on a podcast like this, I get excited. So without letting my publisher know, I'm just going to offer this to everybody. Is that just LinkedIn message me? You can just find me on LinkedIn on Sangram Vajre. And tell me what is the one thing you got out of this, because I love, this time was well spent. There got to be one thing that mattered to you, and if you do, I'll send you a copy of the book. How's that?
Love it. Sangram, thank you. This was an awesome conversation, full of insights, and I really appreciate you sharing with us today.
Anytime.
All right.